first house, sun in the first house. I'm talking about the houses now, and like what it means to have each planet there. I'll go over, what it means to have the planet there, right? The house. We know that the first house is the house of, your persona. It's the ascendant, how people, see you upon, first impressions, right? But it's also, when it has the sun in the first house, right? It ain't just on first impressions. People know your sun sign. They know you for your sun sign, essentially. All right. When it comes down to this astrology stuff, right? So you're known for being even sometimes egotistical about shit. You're that type of person. You can be egotistical in any, manner. What I'm saying here is, it didn't matter what your sun sign was, people could see you as egotistical since you have your sun in the first house. You shine brightly. You seem to, never get in your emotions too much. You're that person that people know about, for this reason or that reason, or, that reason. They see you this way because you do that. You're the person that just does that, and you're like comfortable doing that. You know, you're not always in your emotions. This person is not like that. They don't get emotional that much. And that's a good thing. You know, but it's also a negative thing too, because like people can see you as arrogant or egotistical. Like I said, you know, it depends on the individual. Like I always say. So, sun in the first house, you're basically seen as an egotistical person to some, or a person that's very consciously aware of what's going on around them. You know, aware of what's going on around them. Your sun sign shines very bright. They know you as that. You're very Virgo-esque. You're very, Gemini-esque in the way you move. It's known that you're like that. You're kind of the, embodiment of the sign itself. In a way, you can see it like that. Um, so we got the sun. When you have the sun in the first house and it's in Aries, you're a person that's very bright. You can get agitated a lot. You could, be frustrated with shit moving slow. You like to have fun when you like to have fun. You like to initiate action, you know, not necessarily action, but, action. You'll take action yourself if nobody else does. You see something that other people don't see. You know, you'll be the one who, starts the excitement, starts the fun. You're the one who will start, initiate your own vision, and people will follow you because they see that you have that. You talk about it, it's just who you are. It's seen. You shine bright like that. We call that an extroverted yellow right there. Because that's the sun sign in Aries, an extroverted sign, extroverted fire sign. We call that an extroverted yellow over here. And especially when it's in the first house. We got sun sign in Taurus now in the first house. Green Angel don't have that, by the way, y'all. All right, my son's in another house. Um, this person will be seen as a person who's very sensible, put together. If not put together, a very patient individual. One who can, wait for certain things to come. They understand that they don't have to be upset about things. In time, it will come. These people know shit like that. These people are also very, down to earth. They can hear people out, every once in a while. They'll give people a chance. But like after that chance is done, well, we don't got time for you because we got to take care of our, you know, ourselves. We have to love ourselves. This is an introverted green, you know. Green Angel's an introverted green as far as the sun sign goes. That's your hue, remember? And this is in the first house, so it's definitely for these people. Like, there's no doubt that they're, a Taurus sun. You know, they might not talk to everybody, but they talk to the people who they deem worthy. They feel comfortable around. You know, who they feel will listen to their advice after you know they hear what the other said person has to say for themselves, whatever. you know they're also good at keeping their shit together. They like what they like. They don't like what other people like. They value what they value. That is a Taurus sun in the first house. you know can be assholes at times. They like things, right? Things ground us in reality. They know shit like this. For them, it's a thing that keeps them, you know, around, keeps them involved with what's going on. If they ain't doing that, they don't have that anchor to keep them grounded. You know, they need things. They do. Um, they're good at managing money too. You know, they are. Um, and that's the Taurus sun. All right, and you know them as that type of person who's like that. But they ain't friends with everyone. You know, they're not friends with everyone. They will, fuck with who they want to fuck with and not fuck with who they don't want to fuck with. I know about that because I'm the same way, but I'm a little bit different. Sun in the first house with Gemini as a sun sign. You are seen as a person who likes to run around and talk a lot. You're a gossiper. You're a gossiper. It's all right, gossiper. You know, some people don't mind you. Some people don't like you. Um, you will just talk about all kinds of shit you've heard. Because you've talked to so many different people. You've come across so many different people, and you just feel the need to, like, if you ain't talking to somebody, it's like, why even exist? It's also, when you talk to people, you are typically more, heard. Whatever you say is heard clearly. You don't have to repeat yourself too much unless you're talking to like a wall. Somebody who don't like to hear what you have to say. Then you might have to repeat yourself. But like for the most part, people hear what you say, and it's like just what it is. You don't sound extra about it. You're just very intelligent with how you say shit. You sound like a person that knows what they're talking about, even if you're not smart. You sound that way. So people want to eat calls to you. You know, you're a person that likes to know what's going on in their surroundings. Hence Gemini, sun sign. It's in the first house. You're known as that chatterbox. You're known as that person around town who likes to talk to people. You don't mind, doing that. You have your friends around, so you can talk to them. You love conversation. And that's for that person. Sun sign in Cancer, right? In the first house. You're a person who is, very intuitive. You can tell when somebody else is going through it. You can tell, man, if they're also, if you can also tell if they're also a caring person like you are. If they're not a caring person like you are, um, you're a person who cares about other people. What does this mean? It means you like to, know about their deeper side more. A little bit. You can tell when somebody's, lying, about like how they're feeling. Are you feeling all right? Oh, yeah, I'm feeling all right. But you can tell, like, you might internalize it, but yourself, you're like, this person's not all right. You know, they're just saying that. You may like let them know that but you also might not, and just let it be. You'll probably just do that because you're just like, if they want to like confide in me for like anything, like let me know what's going on with them. Like, are they going through it emotionally right now? They can, but if they don't want to, whatever. But you get hurt by people too. You get hurt by people a lot because you're so caring. You know, people aren't like you though. So you gotta like remind yourself that, when you pour into somebody else, sometimes they don't do the same thing back, or maybe, they need something else. They don't need all that care. Maybe they need more love, you know, which is other things. That's, you giving them things that they've, been needing. That's you, heeding calls to what they have, like, need you to do, and doing it, not getting overcome by things, you know. But you're also good at nurturing people, who are like are down bad, and like you just there for me, like, oh my gosh, I feel you. I don't want you to feel this way anymore. Let's work together to like make you, not feel so down, not be so like that. You know, you like a sob story sometimes, you know, sometimes all the time, you know. Um, Sun sign and Leo within the first house. Sun sign and Leo in the first house, you're a person who shines bright for something. They know you for something, and females too. They know you as that, guy, that girl who um, just does something. You might be the best football player, you might be the best um, bike rider, you might be the best, um, man, at something. And your friends are always saying that, they see what you see in yourself. you know your close ones do anyways. um Other people won't, but then that could tick you off a little bit, but not to like any like, you know you might not get like too, you know animated about it. You might like let them know like why they're wrong, like, yo, you should know that I am this person. you know, are you playing games with me? Or, because like everybody else knows, but you don't. Like, are you living under a rock? Or, that type of deal. You'll be like that. I am known for this and that, and you are acting like, that don't make sense to me. You must be some, you might like try to roast people sometimes. You have a very kingly or queenly aura about you. You want the best of everything, and if you don't get that, then you're upset, and you'll let people know too. But, you still like have your vision set for yourself. You see it at all times. Even when people are like, no, you can't do that, it won't happen. You're kind of arrogant, you're kind of this, kind of that. You don't care. You care about what you see and what you seek, and it's gonna happen. you know you'll attain what you want to attain. As long as you keep these people, you have a way of setting things up for yourself, if you know what I mean. You probably know what I mean when I say that. You know, you have a way of setting things up for yourself because, like I said, you see your vision all the time. Nobody can get you in your feelings, can get you in your emotional state. What you see is what you're gonna obtain. You just got, stick to it. It'll come. Um, Sun in Virgo in the first house. So Sun and Virgo in the first house. You people, you're known as those nitpickers who like, say somebody was, I don't know, um, cleaning up a room, for like guests to come over. Um, and it's like the room's clean, right? But for some reason you just don't like it. Um, you believe, you're like, this is not right. Um, you didn't clean this right, or you didn't have things placed a certain way. We need to have it looking, the best it can. So like, there's no doubt when they come in here, they know that this is our place. You know, this is the place where I stay. They'll do that for themselves, or they'll do it, all the time. They hold themselves and other people to a higher standard. They don't like the half-assedness. If they see something and then they like look at it and they're like, this can be improved upon. They have that type of mind. um it's a good thing to have. It is. But at some points it's like, damn, it's like you're doing too much up here in your mind, which is great. because like you're not one to like fuck around, if you know what I mean. You know, you actually look at something and you're very detailed about it. The exact size of something. How tall is this thing? What color is it? What specific color is this? What kind of material is this made out of? That type of thing. You're very analytical like that. And like at all time specifically, but like there's some Virgos out here that ain't like that, but they are still like that. What I'm saying is they're still detail oriented about things. They might not be the smartest person out there, but they are like very detailed about some shit. You better know that like there's something they do that's like, if you like messed it up, they would be so fucking ticked off. They're practical people too. Very industrious people. They like to improve upon what's there. They like to leave a legacy for themselves. So like when they go, they're like, this person was the best at doing this, and he was known as that guy, or she was known as that girl who did that. That's my friend who did that, and they held me to a higher standard. I might not have liked them at times, but they were, good like that. And that's what they do. There's no question about, the work they put into shit. Um, and that's the truth. Um, so that's them. Now we have, Sun and Libra. In the first house. Sun and Libra in the first house. You are also a chatterbox, but um, you know, I ain't gonna say you're more selective. You have like when in your mind you're like, how can I, you know, help somebody out? How can I make a difference in somebody's day through conversation or something else? Like you see a person who you might think is down about something. You're like, can I, talk to you, what's going on? You might be like, a person that's like, what's going on with you? You seem to be upset, da, 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 da. You ain't gonna like let that person be there, and just like wallow in their like, depressed state or whatever. You're gonna go over, approach them and be like, um, like, how can I help you, man? Are you all right? You know, you doing okay? You don't mind having taken time out of your day to talk to people and maybe even, go the extra mile to like help them out. You know, they might need help with something. You might have information for them that can get them somewhere. Like cool, you're a cool person like that. You know, um, you, you know, don't like, conflict that much, but sometimes you cause conflict too when you're too judgmental to people. You might be a part of this group, right? And in you, he calls these ideas because, these ideas are, what you value. Anybody who's against those type of ideas, you don't like. So then you could be like, oh, you don't follow these ideas that me and my people like, you're a bad person. You should go somewhere else. You're, a piece of shit. You are this or that. Stay the fuck away from me. Stay the fuck away from these people. And you're like, you also, and that's the thing, you like do it like that. You're like, stay the fuck away from these people because they don't like you. You know, we believe in these values. We believe in these ideas, and you don't have those ideas. So go fuck yourself. Go da 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 da. Da. You might be like that. Sometimes when you're in your negative state. You know, not too much though. You try not to. You try to, give everybody a fair shake. You want to like see what's going on with that person. You're like, okay, you might have those like thoughts in your head, like, okay, this person might not be like cool with like what I do, but like you're not gonna like do that right away if you ain't like in your negative state, right? You're gonna like approach the person and you're gonna like ask them certain questions that you need to ask so you feel all right in your mind. Okay, this guy's not gonna mess up things for me, and not just me but people in the community who I you know I care for, or I have some love for. And I don't want to see anybody out here, get hurt. I don't want to see anybody, going through it in my own community because that don't sit well in your mind. My community is a part of me. If my neighbor or my people are, you know, not doing so well, like I'm not doing well. You have that kind of mind sometimes. Very considerate towards people. You ain't gonna use negative words all the time. You're gonna use a calm, cool voice. You come across like that to people. Oh, so sweet. So and so sweet. They always, come to me, and ask me about my day and how I'm doing. And you're that person who does that for people who are like your close acquaintances or your friends. Um, you're like that. A peacemaker, peace talker, a person who's a cooperator, which is a good thing. You know, if you keep doing that, it keeps your mind at ease, and it also helps some people keep their mind at ease too. Um, and that's that. So, Sun in the first house when it's Scorpio, you're a person who's very mysterious to people, but also, to some people you're not. To some people, you are a person that is known to, have drive and can go through like all kind of shit and still be there. You know, you've been a person who's gone through many different transformations in your life. You know, but you're like still there. You know what I'm saying? You're still, the same person at the core. You might not be into this anymore. You've outgrown that phase. You might, be into this now, you know, but you're still whoever the fuck you are at the core of it, and they know you as that person, and they know that you'd be a good friend too. The people who are your friends know you as a great friend, or they may say that about you, but you ain't always gonna like divulge any type of meaningful information or anything about yourself to anybody because you like to keep yourself protected and you look for it and you seek and you do the deeper connections in life, deeper understanding, deeper, meaning to life, somebody to, connect with on a deeper level, not just surface level stuff. And you've always been that way. But you can also get emotional because you ain't finding that right now. But you like don't let it. You don't let it drag you down all the time. Not all the time. You can get frustrated. Is what I'm saying. You might distance yourself. You might cause self harm or harm to other people, at certain times. But you never ever, stop searching for that, you know, meaningful, deep connection that you're looking for. You know and you like to most people you're seen as a mysterious person, that's so and so, but like there's something about him or her that like I just don't, and that's people like in general who look at you, and then your friends know what you're actually doing. You know what I'm saying? um and you're like that, so keep doing that, and keep that drive, and you'll get what you want. People are already seeing you. Maybe they're not seeing you the right way, but they know there's something about you. Um, Sun sign and Sagittarius in the first house. This person's, fun-loving type of person. They like to seek, excitement. They do, but they see things, they see their opportunities, and they attack them. As at their leisure. At their leisure doesn't mean slow. Now, not for these people. No, they like to, seize the opportunity. They seize it. They ain't gonna let anybody else, get in their way. I want to have fun. I kind of want to be the center of the attention. I do. You know, I'm gonna be the one to bring the excitement. Start the fun. You know, have people around me who like, you know, I want to, fuck around with. If I don't want to fuck around with you, I ain't gonna fuck around with you, and I will let you know too. Like I don't like you because of this, and this. You're just not what I'm looking for right now. You're, you're not what I'm seeking right now. Can you please stay the fuck away? Type thing. You will not hold back on, how you feel about some shit. You won't, because you believe in being upfront about things. You believe in, not, lying about shit too much. You don't. You're one of those types of people. You know, even if it hurts somebody's feelings, I had to, and then like, people might see you, know you as, oh, he's that guy or she's that girl who's a fucking dick, who'll just run around and, call people names and shit like that. But that's not the truth. You're just like, you ain't gonna like hold it back. You're just gonna be like, man, you like look ugly, so I don't want to hang out with you, or you don't look well put together. I'm looking for this type of thing right now, and you just ain't it, And you're gonna like, but like people like who like you and fuck with you, like respect you for what you do, for being so, unfiltered and being so, upfront about shit, you know. And you also believe in living life to its fullest. You know, you're not gonna wait for anything. You're pretty impatient about some things, but people don't care. They, gravitate towards you still. Some people won't like you though. You know, they might be jealous. They might not be jealous. They might not like the whole, unfilteredness about yourself. But you should still be unfiltered like that, because guess what? That's a sign for people to, maybe be more forthcoming about some things they need to be forthcoming about with other people, and you serve to be that example to people. So keep doing shit like that. Keep, running around and, finding people that you want to find, making fun of people, having fun, do it, no matter what happens, keep doing it, because living life is living life, and that, you seize the opportunity better than anybody. So do it. Um, Now, Sun in Capricorn in the first house. You're a person who stands on business and means it. You're a very disciplined person. When I got something to do, like, and it ain't just anything to do, it's just like something to fucking do. So I can like build something. I'm trying to like build a family. I'm trying to start a business. I'm trying to, not be poor. I'm trying to be rich. I have to stick to that. You're not gonna like, do anything else from that. Now, you understand too that you could do that, but you're never gonna be seen not doing shit like that. When people see you, they're like, damn, that's my guy who, he's putting in work. He's, working hard towards his goals. Every time I see him, he's wondering why I ain't, doing the same thing, why I ain't, got my shit together, why I ain't, looking for my money, why I ain't looking for, the things that I want, you know, why I ain't taking care of myself, first. And, why am I worrying about other people when I gotta do what I gotta do? But they're also the type of person to like take care of people too, or, hold down for other people too. This is daddy energy, right? Capricorn. We know that, in astrology, gods are associated with planets. That's Kronos, the father of Zeus. That's why they call it daddy energy, Saturn energy. You know, the guy, you know, doesn't want to see somebody else go through it. They hear somebody crying, and it's like, that's my son. Even like it's like in their head that they want to take care of him. Not like completely or anything, because dad doesn't do that. But like, I don't want to see them go through it. If I know I can help them out, I'm gonna help them out. That type of thing. Inside myself, I just, I have something for them. I should just do it and not be too much of an asshole. But you have to still prove to me, that you want that. They're still like that. You still have to work for it. I'm a person of, hard work ethic. I don't believe in just giving shit out, you know because I had to work hard for everything I had. I had to stick to it. I had to, buckle down and not fuck with these people, and turn people the fuck away. Even some people I didn't want to. But I'm a hard worker, and I like doing that, and I like to feel stable. I don't like to not have things. When I don't have things, I can be really a fucking asshole about some shit, you know, and for real, you know, they don't give a fuck about your feelings at all. you know. I need my things, so I can take care of myself, so then I can then take care of, my loved ones, if I have any, but mostly for myself. I have to be grounded. I have to have the most, you know, status, the most, wealth out here. You know, not the most patient, but definitely hardworking. Um, so Sun in the first house, Aquarius. These people like to talk too, and they like to, you know, they fixate on an idea, or and they like to get people like intrigued by these ideas that they have about things. You know, what do you like? They might present to it in a way like, what do you think about this being a thing? You know, they could be known as trendsetters, but not all the time. You know, don't think like that. Um, they like to pick people's brains apart. You know, they like to have conversations. You know, not just unmeaningful conversations. They like smart people. They don't like dumb people. Um, they like conversations that help get people places. They like that type of thing. They like to grow their brain. They don't like idiots. They don't like people who ain't trying to learn new things. Outside the box thinkers, I like to call these people. Whereas other people may like glance over some things, they're the ones thinking about it. You know, all kind of ways, not just about like aliens and shit. Not like that. You know, but like it could be anything. We're looking at society, and then they're like, but like what's really going on? They have questions that are, you know, they like to seek and be curious about things that other people ain't curious about, and it makes other people think too. More. Some people don't like to think though and think for themselves. you know they present controversial type of questions. People, they like to, what they also like to do is um do social experiments with other people, to see how people are. They're really good at like messing with people's heads a little bit. But sometimes it ain't to mess with their heads. Sometimes, like I said, it's to like get them to start thinking for themselves and not thinking, you know so somebody says this is that way, but like, is it really that way? That type of thing. It might be that, it might just be that, but like, let's also consider other things. These people like to present shit like that to people that they're close with, or just people that they feel like they can talk to in conversation about things. This is fixed win. you know that's how it works. you know they ain't friends with everybody, but they'll give people a fair shake and like, conversate with them, when they feel they want to, or they feel like they can approach this person and have a conversation with them. They're known as, free thinkers is what I like to say, in a way, you know, maybe a little bit weird to some people, you know, because I would say a little more selective of like who they give like their real information to and pose the real questions to, but they do like to talk to anybody, and they'll like let people know what their stances are on things, ideas they have, all kind of people too. They'll let you know because this is extrovert or red, um, in the sun sign. But the last but not least is Pisces, right? So Sun in Pisces, first house. These people are compassionate towards other people. They know when people are not feeling too great, not on, they're so, good times, they ain't on their good times. They're down bad, somebody, who's compassionate can come in and be like, well, nobody else wants to help you out, but I feel you and I do. You know, I want to take you from feeling like this to feeling like this. You know, it could happen, you know, go from negative to positive, or if this person don't like you, you know, it could go from positive to negative, you know, depending on the individual. These people are very dreamy and, you know, kind of mysterious to some, but not mysterious. I wouldn't say mysterious. Um, I would say they make their dreams come true. You know, whatever they, you know, imagine for themselves, they like to, you know, do that. These people are, this is introverted signs, by the way, you know, very creative individuals they are. Um, they know how to, you know, spice things up a bit, you know, make things a little more fun, but not in a loud way, but still be loud about it. If you know what I mean. You know, it's an introverted quality. It's not really what they say, but it's like how they do what they do. And then like people are like, damn, you know, that's so and so. Man, that was a very creative move on your part. You know, da 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 da. You know, they have, you know, a way about them that is just, you know, undeniable. They're great lovers too. You know, the ones they care and love. You know, they're more caring than loving, by the way. But you know, they, you know, if they're feeling for you, they're feeling your pain. You know, and like, you know, if they let that build up inside them, they'll like be like, you know, I can't like fuck with this person anymore. Like I can't like not help this person anymore. I have to help them out. You know, it'll come to that sometimes. You know, because if they don't help you out, they won't feel right themselves. They'll just be like, God damn, I'm losing sleep at night. Um, you know, but like they also try to like stay creative. They have their creative ideas that they stick to. Very artistic type of people. Very, you know, musical type of people. Poetry might even be a thing that they're into. You know, shit that I don't do. You know, but they do it, right? And then they're known as that person, you know. They don't mind the sob story either sometimes, but they also want to like take that and like make something good out of it. You know, these people have wisdom as well. You know, and they're known for that too, because it's in the first house and it's the sun sign in the first house. So that was the sun in the first house. Sun in the first house, you might seem egotistical. You know, you rock with your sun sign really fucking hard. You're shine bright with your sun sign. And other people who ain't so cool with their sun sign or you know, may, you know, get more emotional at times, you know, might not like you. But you keep doing what you do because you serve as a, you know, example of what somebody may need to try to emulate. It might not be like everything you do, but there's a certain quality that you have that they need to emulate. So you have to keep doing what you do and like shine bright in your sun sign. You know, keep doing it. Don't let people shake get you into your emotions. And if they do, man, maybe that is somebody that you need to be around. You know, maybe it ain't. You know, situations come, you know, different ways. But be cool on the corner either way.